bench that uses waves made out of walnut wood.
So it's for a treehouse, and so these are the sticks, and one of our objects was a bouquet of flowers, so there's flowers here, and now I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate Louis Armstrong.
So this chair is for the underdog kid, and it's made to sit right in his speedboat, so also has to be made out of clay, so it's all smooth, and it's totally like this kid is gonna sit in this chair, he's gonna feel like a badass.
So mine is, these are springs so the chair can bounce.
If you were to walk into the room right now, you would see a lot of professional people who typically are behind a desk in an office, actively, excitedly poring over their own drawings of a chair. And not just any chair, but a chair that has 5 different descriptors that are the constraints of a particular exercise run by David Lobenthal, who's one of the creative directors at OMSI, Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, that has hosted this conversation this morning. They are actively coloring with giant fat markers on huge pieces of paper and excitedly trying to describe their own solution to this difficult problem.
Mine is a beanbag chair that's sewn together like a soccer ball that's made out of rubber. But this button causes these springs to activate, and it launches you out of the chair into a jumping jack motion. Or it gives you.
We wanted to put business people and professionals in the position of experiencing an hour as if they were a student. So, and let it be known, they don't know each other. So they're coming in fresh. They are meeting other adults for the first time, no idea who they are, and we're literally asking them to draw, which I don't have data on this, but I've got to believe it's one of the top adult fears.
And would you actually sit in that seat? Is it an actual seat?
Well, you can tell I'm not very good at drawing it appropriately, but yeah, I would.
So we right off the bat, we are asking them to take risks and to be vulnerable, and I think it worked.
I think it totally worked. My name's Natalie Sept, and I am one of the co-facilitators for this event.
My name is Rebecca Burrell, and I'm another facilitator for this event.
We were approached by Deb Vaughn at the Oregon Arts Commission as 2 people that are involved in both sort of arts, government, and education issues.
My name is Deb Vaughn, and my title is Arts Education Coordinator at the Oregon Arts Commission. What I do, I don't know if we have time for that in the interview. I do a lot of different things.
And she asked if we'd be interested in leading this event, which is the National Endowment for the Arts Creativity Connects initiative.
So the Oregon Arts Commission accepted some funding from the National Endowment for the Arts to participate in this Creativity Connects initiative, holding a roundtable in your state to talk about how creativity influences other sectors. And we checked the box and we said, yeah, we'll take the money. And then it just sort of sat there, and I perhaps unwisely stepped in and said, hey, I would be really interested in having the conversation be about creativity and science, technology, and education, choosing those 3 sectors. There's a lot of energy in the state around STEAM, science, technology, arts, engineering, math, and there's also a lot of energy around career and technical education for young people, hands-on, applied learning. So all of those things coming together, and then they said, great, here, and then pretty quickly realized that I was going to need some additional help, and thought about who I knew in my world and thought immediately of both Natalie and Rebecca. So here we are.
As we approached this particular project, we were asked by the Oregon Arts Commission to think about it through the lens of education. There's a great number of students right now that are falling behind. So we're in a position right now where we're trying to find ways to have students be engaged, but also, and to the point of Creativity Connects, find ways that we can match the industry need to where schools are at right now.
If you think about who do you want to employ at your business, who do you want to be your caregiver when you're in your end of life stage, who do you want creating the next wave of technology or communications or products, you have to think about what kinds of ways we're helping students learn how to think, because in 10 years, those kids are going to be driving our economy and our industries and this country. And so for that reason, helping students to think creatively and solve problems and learn how to interact with people is all of our issue.
The conversation today is really about drilling down on exactly that. So how can creativity help a child learn better? How can it help a student become a high-performing employee once they enter the field, regardless of what industry they choose to enter? Have we talked at all about who was in the room? Okay, so I think both of us had been to a lot of conversations about the arts and creativity that had the same people from the same organizations, government, nonprofit. And we really wanted this conversation to have a different sort of tone and a wider range of perspectives. So the attendees in the end really turned out to be about half from various industries, and the other half, more or less, were from education.
Well, I come from a background of arts education. I come from a background, I have a
and I
bachelor
work on
degree
our global
in
marketing team, so I oversee the teams working on all of our consumer-facing content and platforms.
This is way different than I expected, but of course I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't even sure why I was here, what it was going to be.
Something that I have noticed with a lot of these conversations Rebecca and I have both been in many different conferences or other meetings, is that there's a certain amount of barrier you put up or a face that you put on when you have to suddenly start to represent your own industry, a particular position that you hold, and the people that you represent.
So when they first came in, they said their first name, so they didn't know what industry they were from. They didn't know their job title. They didn't know if the person sitting next to them was a janitor or a CEO.
In not sharing that title, suddenly we were just coming into the room as the people that we were, irrespective of the jobs.
I think from the first moment, we had sort of stripped them down to the point where they were really raw and kind of ready for anything.
Totally. I was just going to make this totally random anecdote, but do you remember in the Rolling Stones song "Gimme Shelter" when Mary Clayton, who's the vocalist, like the soloist, like her voice cracks in the middle of her solo, and they ended up keeping it anyway? Like, that was the kind of moment that I wanted to have. Apparently when she was doing that, this is totally a tangent. Apparently when she was doing that thing, her hair was in curlers. She was called in the middle of the night and she was so embarrassed, but it was like so raw and beautiful that they kept it. Like that was kind of what I wanted. That's totally right. After the chair exercise, we took a break. The interesting thing I think that happened is that nobody continued to share their title. And after the break, we came back, and that's what began this roundtable. And the roundtable was the moment, again, where our not sharing the titles really allowed them to open up and do this deep dive conversation. And we witnessed, as these conversations unfolded about their earliest memories with certain creative experiences, inspiring and also hard times with problem solving, people opened up to the point where we actually had individuals come to tears because they were being so vulnerable with this other person that they hadn't known before. And that was something that I hadn't necessarily anticipated.
I always felt like an outsider in life. I never fit in school, and I also in college, I wasn't going for.
We had a lot of very tragic hardship when I was very little. My mom was everything was in pretty bad,
I was able to build that sense of myself, being able to solve problems. I probably failed a time or two and had to figure it out.
It's good to just know how to problem solve, that's for sure. It's an essential life skill.
For me, it's kind of everything. If you got a way to do that where you're resilient and you're agile, you're going to be okay.
Good word choices, resilient and agile, and I think it makes the world a lot less scary.
So, in closing up the really intimate conversations in the round table, we let everybody go around and reveal who they were in the sense of what their title was and what organization they were from.
By that point, it really didn't matter. I think everybody was on the same team at that point.
So the next piece in the day, we broke and let everybody go to lunch. We only gave a short amount of time for people to get food because this was a packed day with a lot of outcomes and expectations.
Right, so we had 6 hours to basically go around the world and back, get a bunch of strangers to talk about creativity and education and come to some concrete conclusions about next steps. I mean, it's sort of an impossible task. And so we realized that we were living in the world of the theoretical, but we felt like we needed to have some real world examples of really interesting interdisciplinary education that are happening in our state.
We have a philosophy where it's learned by doing. The footwear designers,
we did have 2 wonderful speakers come and join us to share their experience. The first one is Suzette Henry. She is a co-director of this organization called Pensole, trying to train up individuals to be a good match for the design needs of Nike, Adidas, and other companies.
the school is free for students. The school is sponsored by brands that are in this city, as well as East and West Coast, global brands. We make the brands responsible. You want to play with us, then you're going to show up, and you can mold somebody. You literally can cultivate somebody that you can invest in, and you can imagine that person on your team.
I feel like this idea, I want to just blow up the whole afternoon and figure out how do we take this idea of like an industry professional creates an educational environment that then feeds into the industry exactly what the industry is looking for, and then those people then give back. How do we blow that out to the entire educational system? Like that's a conversation I'm really interested in brainstorming about.
By creating programs, by literally everybody. Once you leave here, you connect, you make sure you connect, and you give yourself a deadline to connect, and you create a program.
Yeah, make it happen.
No matter what it is it a weekend?
It was a really beautiful thing to hear her talk about the impact of her work and the structure of the organization, which is a brilliant strategy that I think many of us felt like we were surprised is not more common.
She was coupled with Beth Bundy. She's a K-12 design educator that came out of the Stanford Design School.
And I think the biggest struggle that I've had is I feel like we teach to create a product. I feel like we teach very product oriented. You know, you need to be able to turn in this assignment. We teach kids how to do school, but I personally feel like there needs to be process up there too. Process is huge. Just teaching kids about how to fail.
So as an art teacher, she was actually able to teach the kids science and math and history and every other subject through providing them with a series of design challenges that allowed them to work collaboratively to solve problems. So true real life style learning that gets kids engaged, feeling like they're doing work that's relevant, that has meaning outside of the classroom, and feeling like they're building skills that they can use in their lives. So after lunch, we broke into 2 groups to sort of get into the nuts and bolts of what resources exist around interdisciplinary education in this state, and then also looking at what we can do to better collaborate to make those resources available to all kids. I would say in my group, we really got a little bit emotional about looking at the many, many resources in our state and identifying how many of those resources are confined to urban areas.
Like my heart leapt into my throat a little bit because I live now in a rural area and I don't see so much. I don't see any of those opportunities that I really took for granted when I lived here in Portland, that those aren't so much there. So we got into this deep discussion of equity. And what does it mean? What are we missing in Oregon to give all Oregonians, all young people, the same opportunity and a comprehensive education? So
That was the biggest takeaway for me of the conversation that we had in my room. Kids who live in rural areas are really being left behind. It was really important to the Oregon Arts Commission that we come away with some resolutions for next steps. So everyone really needed to come away with having some kind of commitment for how they would carry this conversation forward, or how they would incorporate the things that we had discussed into their daily work. So we had everyone go around the table and say what is something that they personally committed to doing.
A lot of people made commitments that they want to learn about what is already out there and find ways to collaborate, or they were most surprised that folks didn't know much about what other resources existed.
One person suggested we lock everyone into a room until they redesign the funding scheme for education.
And then also to continue these conversations with more representatives from industry at education. And then also next time, having kids themselves, the actual students in the room, to talk about their own experience.
It is clear to me after this meeting that people throughout the state are hungry to collaborate with each other. In the nonprofit sector, we always talk about how, we all need to take responsibility for community issues. And I think those that work in business really want to contribute, but they don't know how. They're not given the opportunities. They don't know who the players are. They don't know where to fit in. And it's clear that they are ready. And on the nonprofit side and in the government side, they want to work with business folks too. But I think in a lot of cases, they also don't know how to make connections. So we were able to establish some of those connections, and that feels like a big deal. I really believe that these people will come together again, and they will do something very meaningful together.